Hi, everybody. Gosh, I'm going to talk really fast so we can get drinks. So why isn't work an adventure? So if you talk to the kids, they say, work sucks. Man, I don't want to work. I'm sorry, the polite term is labor provides disutility. Right? So you learn that in Economics 101, that the reason we have to pay people is because work sucks. Right? It's a bad thing. Except for a lot of us in here, it's not. We're passionate about what we do. And we want to create that passion for everybody in our organization. But it's hard. It's really hard. So how do we do that? How do we go from this underlying labor provides disutility? Even that word labor is awful, right? It's like back-breaking, I'm digging a ditch, to something that is empowering, something that's exciting, something I can take my energy and passion and put it into. Maybe there's a way to do it. Well, let's just ask people. What do you like to do at work? Do you enjoy? We don't know, right? If I ask Tom Gardner, why do you like chocolate ice cream, Tom? I don't know. It's complicated, right? You like chocolate ice cream, I know that. But sometimes you order vanilla. What's the deal on that, right? So how do we know what we really like? How do we know unless we have some measurement tool? So companies started coming to me and asking me this question, and I said, I don't know. But if you let me in the door, maybe I can do some neuroscience and figure it out. Because our brains are not designed to reveal its inner workings. So I spent 8 years measuring brain activity to understand why some people love what they do, why they're passionate, why they're energetic, and then how we can measure that to create an environment where people are very engaged, really productive, and organizations flourish. And it turns out there are two key components to creating these workplaces: trust and purpose. So I'm going to tell you a little about both of those things. Now, knowing what they are and actually implementing them are really different things. So when these companies first came to my lab, I said, oh yeah, I know a lot about trust. I was the first scientist that showed that oxytocin, this brain chemical, is released when we trust somebody, and I can come into your workplace and I'll measure blood from your employees, and their faces would turn white. I'm like, oh no, my God, you can't do that, right? That's not going to work. But a couple really nice companies, like Zappos and Herman Miller, did let me come in and take blood from their employees and measure brain activity and measure their productivity and have their employees do tasks where I could quantify innovation and check their mood and see how much they really got out of this workplace experience and how fast they shed the stress of work. So after doing this for 8 years, we developed a set of tools so that anybody can measure and manage culture for high performance. So let me tell you about those building blocks. So as we started doing this work, we took all the laboratory science and applied it to organizations so that we could understand the building blocks of trust. So again, if you want to implement this, you've got to both measure and intervene. And the intervening part is hard if you don't know what those building blocks are, right? If I just say trust, what is that? Okay, so once we can measure trust, we can measure its components. And those components somehow magically have an easy-to-remember acronym which spells out oxytocin. I don't know how that happened. I have no idea. So what the science says is that if I create an environment in which employees in my workplace are interacting with each other in a positive way, that induces the brain to release oxytocin. What's oxytocin do? Reduces physiologic stress, so now I'm calmer. Also increases our sense of empathy. So now I understand better about what the people around me are doing, and in particular, what they care about. So I become a much more effective team member. That makes me more productive. By reducing physiologic stress, I'm able to now ideate better. I can innovate more effectively. Again, we've measured this directly. And so now I have a tool to manage this important part of what we think of as an unmeasurable component of organizations, which is culture. So culture is a big word. I don't really know what culture is. I may know the definition, but I know a lot about this aspect of culture, trust, right? So once we know these building blocks, then organizations can push on one or more of them and can increase trust and gain that benefit from higher productivity, higher engagement. We're going to get to happiness in just a second for Steve. So the neuroscience makes some very specific predictions on how to implement these changes in culture to get the biggest impact on brain and behavior. So the first take home is, this is measurable because neuroscience has developed in the last 15 years to tell us a lot about how human brains work together. Excellent. So we have a framework to understand culture, which is, this is a set of humans who are interacting with each other. We know a lot about that. The second is, if I want to implement changes in my culture, I have to do a couple of things. First of all, I know what the building blocks are. I want to push on those things, but pushing on them is not enough. I have to know how to do it effectively. Because I'm a very, very boring person. I don't want to waste resources. I could willy-nilly try things. Maybe that'll work. Or I can much more surgically go, for example, here's something I want to do to recognize high performers. So in that oxytocin acronym, the O stands for ovation. Ovation is my word for recognizing high performers. What's the science say about this? Recognition that is goal-oriented has a bigger impact on brain and behavior, that's close in time to when the goal is met, that comes from peers, that's unexpected, that is tangible, that is personal. So now I want to set up a program so that the community of people who work with me understand that in our community we value high performers. So I can do that in a variety of ways, but I want to use the science to get the biggest impact so that I don't just randomly make changes in the way my culture works. So one thing we do, which I stole from John Mackey, and John's here, was to do weekly gratitudes in my group. Right? So start our weekly meeting, and the first thing we do is talk about who we're grateful to, right? And why. Right? That can be followed up with a personal gift. It can be followed up with any kind of recognition with the team having some time off. Right? Whatever that is, it's much better if we decide, oh, these guys are awesome. They worked for 3 months on this project. Let's make sure we recognize what they did, how they did it, and the how is also important. Right? So as I'm doing these recognitions, I also want to debrief. By debriefing, I'm generating opportunity to share best practice. So now I'm creating a very tight feedback loop in the brain, and that's exactly what I want to begin to change culture. Right? I'm going to say, here's the way we as a community, value what we're doing. We're going to be tangible. We're going to be clear about what our goals are, and to set aspirations for those who are not being recognized, but observe the recognition from their peers. Right? So, again, lots of examples. I might be doing a practicum tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I am. So much more detail working on this in the practicum. But the idea is, number one, culture is measurable, at least this aspect of culture. The science has developed to a point where I can very effectively implement changes in culture. And now the hard part is, how do I change people's behaviors? It takes between 30 and 60 days to change a habit, so it means you have to nag people, basically. So if you're going to make these culture changes, you have to do it, reinforce it, do it over and over until it becomes second nature. So this is a kind of fake it till you make it. Okay, so now let's get down to happiness. What's the science say about how much people enjoy doing something? So I'm going to do a book signing after this, so you can come chat with me afterwards. The book was excerpted from HBR. I know a lot of people saw the HBR piece. And in that, I said, it's not about making employees happy, about having Taco Tuesdays or Karaoke Fridays. Why? It's great if you give me free stuff or balloons or tacos, whatever we're doing. That doesn't produce any lasting effect on my productivity. It just means, hey, I work in a place that gives me free stuff. Those are always nice. We know from the science there's a couple things. One is, for me, really to be engaged with the humans around me at a level in which I'm connecting to them and putting all my energy and passion into moving the organization's goals forward, I need to have a challenge. I need a goal. I need to know why I'm doing this. And if it's hard, that gives my brain more reason now to build teams together and to work to reach that goal. Okay, so what I want to do is, at work, create difficult stretch goals and provide an opportunity for team members to own those goals. When they do, then their brains have a reason to come together and to form very effective teams. Right? So think of this as sitting on the couch. Right? If you're sitting on the couch, your brain is in resting mode. There's no reason to create the suite of neurochemicals necessary for you to get together and coordinate with somebody. But if you've got to get over this big mountain and you've got to get some equipment over and you've got to coordinate all the people around you, now our brains are in concert. They're working in sync. We see that when we measure that in real organizations, that now there's a reason to do this. Now there's a focus on doing this. When I pull that together, that stretch goal, I'm under stress. Stress is not a bad word. Challenge stress is really good. Challenge stress that's time limited, that has a clear endpoint. That's really important. We like that. And now I reach the top of that mountain and I have this sense of celebration. Oh my gosh, we actually pulled this thing off. Can you believe it? Right? And now I feel satisfaction. So it's not about happiness. It's about creating an environment where people can do something that's important with a trusted team. When that happens, the brain produces this suite of chemicals in which I feel satisfied with my life. Okay? So the other ingredient besides trust is purpose. So there's different kinds of purpose. The common one we think of is transactional purpose. That's the important daily doing of business, buying and selling, meeting customers. But I'm talking about something bigger, which I call transcendent purpose. This is right out of Peter Drucker and Deming's playbook, right? The reason your organization exists at all, which is at its core to improve people's lives. So when that purpose is communicated to employees, when they understand why what they're doing is important, it's a sacred duty that you have to create an experience for your customers, we find experimentally very motivating. Here's where the science comes into play again. When I take trust, combine it with purpose, I get this oxytocin double whammy. Now I'm so motivated because the people I'm working with are awesome, right? We take care of each other, we're reliable, we got each other's backs. And I realize that the reason I'm working so hard is because I'm making a dent in the universe. I'm making a positive impact on people's lives, my community, right? That is the double whammy. And when we see both those things occurring, we see that people experience joy at work. Right? So that's a different concept to me than, oh, I was happy for 10 minutes because I got free food. It's really creating the opportunity for you to own that joy. It's empowering individuals to really be at their best whenever possible. Sounds good in theory. Does it work? Right? So in my book, I said, if you have $1 billion of retained earnings, God bless you, you can do whatever you want. But for everyone else, you actually got to show a return on investment. You're going to make payroll next week, right? So if this is really going to improve performance of the organization, then how do we know it? Well, let's look at the return on investment. So it turns out that many of these factors that affect culture are very low cost, right? I can get you a $50 gift card for coffee to recognize your hard work. I can give you, take your team out to Disneyland for not very much money, right? So it's not that these things are expensive, but they require attending to them. So I want to stress you and then give you a chance to recover, celebrate, come back and stress you. Just like working out, right? Working out your muscles, working out your brains the same way. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to test whether those interventions actually return on investment. What we find is like a 500% return on investment, variously measured. So we collected national representative data from working people, compared those working in high-trust organizations to low-trust organizations. We looked at companies that followed our advice and did these interventions to see the return on investment, and it's extraordinarily high. And it's high because it's what the humans within your organization want, right? They want to feel like they're doing something important. They want to work with a team that cares about them, right? So if you can create those ingredients, then what you get is people who are passionate about what they're doing. They're not dissipating their energy thinking about looking for a new job, finding out who's getting a raise, blah, 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 blah. They have lots of information. They're empowered to do their best work, and they're not distracted by things that don't matter to the organization. So we see that those who work in high-trust organizations not only are more productive, objectively are more innovative, They stay at their jobs much longer. They take fewer sick days. And interestingly to me, they are more satisfied with their lives outside of work. So when you work at a place that gives you an opportunity to be your best, when you come home, you're a better spouse, you're a better parent, you're a better citizen, right? Because you're empowered with this understanding that you did something important. Right? So the bottom line is that creating an environment for people to flourish affects the triple bottom line. It's great for employees, it improves performance of organizations, and it strengthens society. So what's not to like about that, right? It's the way our brains work. Our brains are built to form connection. We want to be in an environment where we can flourish, and I think it's up to all of us who run organizations to work extraordinarily hard to create that environment. And you do this by running what I call management experiments. Start small, try things, at least think of neuroscience as a foundation for improving culture. And when you do that, you can see incrementally these changes in as little as 6 months. So, I've become a culture maven, which is weird for a neuroscience guy like me, but culture is just how human beings organize themselves. It's not fixed, it's not immutable. You, as leaders, can affect it, and people want you to. They're craving a great culture. So I encourage you to think about culture as another process that you can improve, you can optimize, and you can improve how people engage at work with each other and with customers. All right, you guys, thank you very much for listening.